question. Yes, sir, at the back.
Yeah, a very experienced angel investor that I know often says of angels and VCs, we're not in the investing business, we're in the exit business.
Yeah.
And I didn't see any explicit conversation in your pitch about exit.
Yeah.
Is there a reason for that?
I left it out on, sorry?
I can answer that.
Yeah, go ahead.
We actually have been talking about, we had a VC panel last week with 2 VCs and 2 entrepreneurs, and then a lecture before terms of investments, and before that bootstrapping. So actually Peter is part of our money module. So we've had some other things just to sort of wrap around that. It is hard to get all the information in one lecture, but then I'll let you answer it.
Well, it's a good point. I mean, I didn't want to dwell on that too much, but it will often come up. They're investing in companies to exit. How do you exit? Maybe you don't exit. It just becomes a nice family business, okay? Maybe you do an IPO or you get bought. I mean, there's not many ways that you can have liquidity at the end of the day, but every investor wants that. And it's called a return on investment. It's an IRR. So that internal rate of return that they're looking for as an investor, it's about winners and some marginal plays. They'll get some base hits, but they're also trying to get a 5 or a 10x on their investment. One of the questions you'll often be asked, and you should have a good answer, so I appreciate your question, is who would logically buy you? And you may not have that answer right away, but you better have your comparables down. So the competitors that we put up for Wave Accounting, some of those were logical acquirers. And in fact, he's bigger than some of those competitors now that could have bought him, I think, and is on a different trajectory in some ways, so it's good to see. But that will often come up. I do not generally like it when you create a separate slide to say here's the M&A we're on. It's usually a little aggressive to show that and somewhat presumptuous, and usually backfires with many investors. It's kind of like saying I'm wildly entertaining and successful and accomplished. It's boastful. It's like doing that on a resume. It's stuff that they can generally conclude from all the evidence that they're presented. But unless you've got some really, really good insight into the fact that you've got a wired deal with, a big company, it's very hard to sort of put that down on paper. I've seen it done, and it can be really tacky. The best way to do it, though, is to say, well, 2 of our competitors have recently been bought for these kind of numbers, 8 million in, 80 million exit, yada, 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 by these same people that we just happen to be talking to as partners right now. Hint, hint, wink, wink. And there's a lot of that really good CEOs will do. They'll blend that into the deck, but they won't overtly put the word M&A action or anything like that. But you can imply so much from some of those discussions. Because you go, wait a second, wasn't that company ABC the same one that you've got a partnership deal with? And they just bought one of the guys that was on your competitive slide, and you just nod and you just play it cool. That's what the best companies are doing. But I think many of you are probably far away from that right now in terms of where you are in your business. But a more seasoned CEO or somebody that's in an A round really needs to have a lot of that stuff laid out in a good way. Hope that's helpful.
Hi, Peter.
Hi.
Thanks a lot for your presentation. You mentioned that there are a lot of different, advice on how to build a pitch deck. Now, you mentioned a lot of do's for your pitch deck. What are some of the don't do's that you just mentioned one with the M&A example, but what are some of the others?
It's a really good question. I'd say, one of the things that I really stress for people is that what's the most valuable slide in the deck, do you think, after what you've seen today? I'll show you real quick. I'll just rewind to it. Can anybody guess what the most valuable slide in the deck is? I'm giving away my trade secrets here. Yeah, I think the business problem and solution is good, but going back to slide number 3, it's really, really powerful when you look at it. I call this, put your iPhone and your BlackBerry and your iPad down and listen up, because I'm going to tell you what we've achieved as a company, and then I'm going to successively unpack all of those chapters of the story as we go through. Okay, right here. That's the problem. That's the pain. This is the solution, the gain. And then we do this. That's the most important slide in the deck. It may not feel that way, but what you should be doing is summarizing all of the things that you've achieved, the milestones that you've achieved early on in the deck in the 2-minute mark. Because what you do is now you successfully unpack your product, your customers, your intellectual property, some of your partnerships, all of that goodness that's baked in, but some of the high points around industry awards, media coverage. You know, we were selected as an OCE, winner. You know, we've got government grants that have been put in. This is where you can put all your candy here. You spill it all in the lobby. And essentially what you want to do is now walk them into the boardroom and through a series of other doors in the presentation and unpack some other things. Do you know why this is so important? It's because people tune out. At various points of your presentation, just like you probably did with me tonight, there were some low points and you kind of thought, oh, geez, I got to walk the dog tonight before the Leafs game. You know, it's very important. You got to keep waking people up. And this is a very important slide if done properly, that allows you to summarize what makes you tick as a company. Executive summaries are baked into documents for this reason. You're going to tell them everything about the high points of the company, and now you're going to tell them what you told them throughout the rest of the presentation. Very important. Don't leave that out. And I would say just the setup, back to your question. Most entrepreneurs do a terrible job of defining the business problem. Dave McClure says 80% of his investment at 500 startups is defined by the business problem. He sees technology every day. He works with the smartest guys, from Bangalore right through to Palo Alto. And he's saying, at the end of the day, it's all about their understanding of the business problem and the way that they can articulate it in a really unique way. So I would say the upfront time you spend on that. And that's where I tend to spend an inordinate amount of time with entrepreneurs. Yeah, which one did you want to see?
The tooth decay. The problem.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, and I would say in the context of this, many companies really can't find that one image that symbolizes pain. And I would say if you haven't found it, keep searching for it, because it's gorgeous when you find pain. And this actually turned out to be that we found a couple of images that it ended up kind of looking like the same girl 40 years later. And we found an old dentistry picture, and it's great, and it works every time. I don't change this out. I'm going to probably use this every year just to show you. We did another one for Blue Zone Technology. It's recycling anesthetic gas. And as I was talking to the CEO, it was very obvious at the end of the day. I said, I think I know what your first slide should be. You've got a 95 and 5 problem. And she goes, what do you mean? I said, well, the stats you were using, that if you go above 5% on a patient of anesthetic gas, you kill them. You're supposed to put the patient to sleep, not kill them on the operating table. So if we give them 6, 7, 8%, they're dead. So what the problem is the 95% that goes up the flue stack outside the hospital, that's not recycled in any way. It goes right into the atmosphere. One of the most toxic things that we could possibly put into the atmosphere. So it's actually a clean tech play with a health sciences layer, because they're recycling one of the most expensive drugs in the hospital system, which is anesthetic gas. So what we did was we showed an operating room, 5%, and then we showed gas going up the flue, 2 stock images, 95%, and saying we have a 5 and 95 problem. And everybody went, my God, that's so intuitive. And the presentation wasn't really hitting it properly. And when we took that company down to a Mars-sponsored event in Palo Alto, the CEO, she was really popular. Sequoia was the first meeting she took. They wanted to know a lot more, so it really punched through. Anyways, I want to Carrie's going to make sure, she's a hockey fan, that we get out of here and watch the Boston game tonight.
So I just wanted to a couple end notes. One is that if you're part of the LinkedIn group, we're going to post Peter's other videos there. If you do get the newsletter every Monday, you've signed up for the program, there will be a link to the slides and the video and everything. So I know there's a lot of information in this presentation, so you have access to it later. Also, anyone interested in the workshops program or the Jolt Accelerator program, there is information outside on your way out. And with that, I would like to thank Peter Evans for finishing off the program.
Thanks very much.